Hello and welcome back to the 1904 Club, the Hull City podcast from the 1904. Baz here, Bernsey, Fletch, Prutz, and we've got a special guest today, fresh from his little his worm on Sky Sports on Saturday. Curtis Davies, welcome to the show, mate. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I don't think we can really call it a worm. I think it was more of a, what can we call it? Do you know, like a little woodlouse?
That's what you can call it.
Yeah. like when you find those little dead woodlouse around your house. That's what I was doing.
Prutz, how are we, son?
Good. It's nice to we're breaking new ground on a Monday, aren't we? And I mean this with the greatest respect. Talking about a win.
Yeah. And based on the second half performance, a completely deserved one as well. So let's rejoice in some positivity for once, because everybody keeps moaning that we're negative. So let's be positive for once.
Is that the finger getting pointed at you? It's mainly you, Baz, isn't it? And not obviously the harbinger of doom that is Fletch.
I could join you on that if you want me to be fair. We did the game live on the Friday night against Sheffield United, and I've always said possession's brilliant. I like teams to have possession. Obviously, it gives you the best chance of having a structure to win the game. But if you're not effective with it, then it's worth nothing. And I found that throughout that Sheffield United game, there were concerns with how City approached it. But I was more concerned with the manager's post-match interview, if I'm being totally honest, in the fact that he kind of was quite defiant, was quite pleased with the performance and blamed the defeat on mistakes, which, yes, they were mistakes on the counter-attack, but they weren't the only two. There were another couple. I think there was one with Kiefer Moore where he should have scored, another couple of opportunities where they could have scored on the break again. So as much as it's mistakes, there's also a level of naivety in the way that they played. But having watched the highlights of the Stoke game, the first half seemed pretty similar. I think the first from goal kick, was it from the centre? Sorry,
yeah.
You conceded a goal from giving the ball away in front of our box, and then from there, you start worrying again. But fortunately, second half was a lot better, and the positivity of players like Casey Palmer in the team, who is willing. I've played with Casey, and I know what he's like. He's fearless, so he'll take the risks and play balls through the lines, which is what was lacking against Sheffield United. We saw the Sheffield United game, like I say, pass, all lovely. The best chance that City had was from a cross just through into the box, and then Malem hit the bar. So I think if you're going to talk negativity, I was on that road as well with yous, but more just out of frustration of the possession's good, but there needs to be more substance to it.
Absolutely. Fletch, come to you. What were your thoughts on Friday night and the importance of that victory?
Scared at half-time, wondering what was going to happen, but it's nice to see that they can dig themselves out of a hole. It's something they haven't done so far this season. I was quite happy with the way they passed it around the back at times. It looked quicker. It looked better connected. My issue remains with Zambrano in the sense of there's just nobody alongside him. But as we were discussing before recording, that won't change tactically. He's got to basically do it all himself, which just leaves them quite vulnerable when build-up plays too slow and passing for passing's sake. But when they get it forward, I just, for the first time this season, saw some shoots of positivity. Not only getting the equaliser, yes, it was from a penalty. Balumi did well to win it, stayed alert. But once they got in front, they actually kicked on, which is something we haven't really seen so far this season. So, all in all, it would appear we've turned a small corner, and I hope that continues.
Bernsey, we've spoken a lot in recent weeks about the need for Tim to be perhaps a little bit more pragmatic at times. We said that last week about his style was, he was so wedded to his style that he wasn't going to make any changes. It felt like he asked his team to be, particularly his defenders, to be a bit more conservative, perhaps not quite so much overlapping and running around. And Zambrano, it felt before he came off that Zambrano was a little more kind of rigid in that traditional number 6 role. Again, not quite so keen to bomb on and get around the pitch. And they had a bit more of a structure. Is that fair?
I think we said before the Sheffield United game, they haven't really got anybody in the midfield that can tackle. And I was surprised Zambrano, as I said last week, didn't start against Sheffield United, because I thought he did all right against Leeds. and he did all right the other night. I thought they were the better side in the first half, despite conceding a goal. But everybody concedes daft goals from corners these days. It's maybe something we'll talk about with Prutz and Curtis. And it's weird at the moment, but it was a good goal from Stoke. But I actually thought they were the better side, and I thought they might get something out of this. They've had enough possession. They weren't doing enough with it. The changes happened in the second half. I couldn't understand why he didn't start Miller, because you could see the impact Miller had on the game. Whether that's a fitness issue or whatever, I don't know. I don't know whether anybody's asked the question. Slater made a difference. Again, should have started for me in the game because he gives them a bit more solidity. And and it was nice. This is not me having a pop at Sean McLaughlin. As you know, I think he's a good player. But it was nice to see him not popping up in the number 10 role and just concentrating on being a defender. I think that made a difference. So I don't know whether they were more pragmatic, they were more conventional, and it made a difference. And as Curtis says, Casey Palmer, we know coming in, because we all thought this is a good signing, proved it on Friday night. So is it a turn, a corner turned? I don't know. I'm hoping so, but I think it makes a big difference.
Prutz, what was your assessment of it?
Oh, I was going to sneeze then. That's why I muted very briefly, because I was sniffing, which annoys me.
I thought the Milkman was turning up again. You looked
again.
I thought the Milkman was turning up. You sort of looked away again, a bit awkwardly.
No, he only pops in when I'm away working. No, I think echoing what everyone said so far, that we were trying to make sense of what was going on, and I mean that again without condescension or taking the mickey or anything, because it was the element of a team that was quite clearly had something about it, but the direction, the control of the game, the chaotic side of how he wants the team to play was very much to the fore, without obviously no result actually to show for it. I thought they showed great resilience. Sometimes in a game you can dig yourself into a bit of a hole and they managed to pull themselves out of it. Good goals. Regan's especially was a very good goal. And City looks bright, positive, energetic on the counter. And when you go into a Stoke City that have changed manager, I mean, inexplicably for me, but that's a different podcast, isn't it? That's a Stoke City one. And have got a bit of a groundswell behind them and the aerial ability from set pieces, then it's always going to be tough. So there's plenty to like about what they did. Yes, games coming up, Cardiff obviously in particular, given the fact that they've booted off their manager and are really struggling, should be another 3 points, should be. Obviously different necessarily in practice, but the permutations of players, Palmer, I think, going back to Curtis's point of the type of player that he is, undoubtedly a quality signing going forward, showed real menace, occupied the opposition, and with players up and alongside of him, it just looked really good. Maybe when you look at a team that's coming together and taking a while to click, a second half such as this is just exactly what they need, which had everything: goals, resilience, 3 points, and left everyone feeling pretty happy with themselves, didn't we? But that's got to be, this is the first on a first tiny step, isn't it, on a long road potentially somewhere for City.
Curtis, the manager, I was just going to say, the manager spoke after the game about the changes that he made at half time, obviously bringing on Liam Miller. He said himself it was luck because Abdouche Omer had got a knock, so had to come off. But Miller made such a difference, didn't he? We talked about Casey Palmer, but Miller, he had so many touches in that early in that first half, and he was just keen to get at Stoke, wasn't he?
Yeah, and that's it. When you've got a player that directly wants to run at people, beat people, it changes the dynamic of the game, because it's all good having people in spaces that are willing to pass and make all these great movements, but then you rely on those movements getting you a goal. Whereas when somebody's got the flair of Miller and the confidence to just say, I'm just going to go at him every time, he can take it both ways. And like I say, he came on in the Sheffield United game, and I thought he livened it up a bit, and came on again today. Came on again against Stoke, and again was fantastic. So it's a big question to see what happens the next game. I think coming back to Prutz's point about playing Cardiff, it should be 3 points. But I think the worry with Cardiff is they're coming to City and they might have a new manager by then. Unlikely, but even if it's not a new manager, it will be someone that just steps in charge and thinks, let's just get a point. And then all of a sudden, City are playing a similar game where playing a team that are just coming for a point, sit behind the ball, and will play on the counter attack. And it's down to them to break them down. So I think that's always the worry with those kind of teams when they've just had somebody sacked. But following on from that performance, they should be confident knowing that they can obviously score a few goals.
Casey, Curtis, just talk to me about Casey Palmer, because you said you played with him. I mean, I interviewed him on Wednesday ahead of the game, and it was really refreshing to just talk to somebody that was, a player that gave really honest answers, was really open, and just his character. It felt like his character was really bubbling. I sort of put that to Tim Walter afterwards and said, particularly when things perhaps aren't going as well as you'd like, results aren't where they'd want to be. There's a lot of negativity. Fans are concerned. And you've got a player like Casey that walks into the dressing room. He's got a big smile on his face. He's bubbly. He's been around the Championship a long time, 200 games now. What's he like?
Exactly that. He's somebody that really enjoys football. I know it sounds silly because we're all professional footballers, but I think Prutz will tell you, you go in, day out, there's not everyone always smiling and laughing every single day. There's certain players that get on with their job, go home. There's certain players that will more think, I'll just get through this and then go harder in the gym or whatever it's going to be. But he's someone that once he's out on that training pitch, he's the one that soon as before the warm-up wants to get on the balls, wants to get the balls out, wants to get little nutmegging people in the warm-up and stuff like that, just trying to have a bit of fun. And that character is just what's going to break the whole duck, I guess, with all this kind of, like I say, negativity that I guess we're coming out with a little bit. He's the type of player that will get you off your feet because he's willing to lose the ball by playing it forward, which is a good trait to have. If you've got the person that's playing beside him in midfield and they're happy to have 90% complete passes, but every single pass is 5 yards, 10 yards, sideways, backwards, then that's fine. You can have someone that gets 90% pass completion. But Casey's willing to drop his pass completion down by trying those balls through the line. So if he'll try 10 balls through the line and he only gets one, then it will create something. And I think particularly against Sheffield United as well, you saw that as soon as he came on, there was an upturn in how Hull City were playing.
Go on, Bernsey.
But Curtis, he's willing to risk the ball in areas where it's a bit safer because the way they've been playing earlier and the way his system seems to be built, he and other managers do it because you see it all the time, but they're willing to risk the ball in defensive areas in their own final third. And I sit and watch it and my head explodes. I think, why are you doing it? Why are you risking it? How do you see it as a defender?
That's exactly it. I think there's structure to playing out, and there's a way of playing out where you can be a bit risky with the ball but still have a solid structure. I think if you go back to the way Liam did it, Liam's teams made mistakes. Liam's teams conceded goals from breakdowns. But the difference with Liam is, I know having played with him, is he always had two centre-halves that stayed where they're meant to be. He didn't have his centre-halves underlapping and overlapping, and like, as you said about McLaughlin playing in the 10, his centre-halves pretty much were told, you two are the base, you two stay there, and he'd always have one of the two sitters, obviously we've only got one with Zambrano now, that would always kind of roam around and be ready to pounce if the ball breaks down. But I think the big thing with Casey and him is, like I say, he's not dropping deep to go looking for the ball and trying to create something from nothing. He's holding his position, and then when he gets into a decent area, as you say, he's playing nice, sharp passes and then playing those cute passes between the lines, which are risky in terms of giving the ball away, but they're not risky because if it goes through, it's going out for a goal kick or it's going through to the keeper. It's not going to cost you a goal on the breakaway like so many times it's happened this year already.
Bernsey, were you waving again?
This is a question coming into the... Yeah, I was. It's a question because it's relevant. It's for the panel. It's this from JP Hull in Asia. So all of you, we'll go to Prutz first. Do you think he changed his system as the back four were played in a more traditional way? Prutz?
A very good question. I think systematically, it felt like it was more to do with approach in a mindset sense than anything else. I think going to Stoke was always going to be tough, but going back to Curtis's point about what they want and what he wants from his back line. Liam was quite patient with the ball at the back. City are seemingly, as we were discussing a couple of weeks ago, playing around the centre of the pitch, whereas in the second half against Stoke, there was more direct. There was a more direct nature to it. From a formational sense, I don't think there's not going to be a vast swing between what he wants and what he's declared he wants and what appears on the pitch. I just think it's been a case of tinkering, if you like, and making sure that those small tweaks, those fine margins that haven't necessarily been going for City, have gone for them. They took the chances, and defensively were pretty stout. So I didn't see something glaringly obvious. Curtis has got a far greater tactical mind than I have, plus as well being a former defender. He's just given us his take on what potentially Tim wants from the back line. First and foremost, you want your back line to be resolute enough to repel anything that comes towards you, which second half of the game they did, and then took the chances. So I think it was as much to do with the mindset of the players, believing that they could dig themselves out the hole, seeing a game through, as it was to do with formational changes, I would say.
Curtis, thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, it's as Pratt said, I think naturally as a defender, your mindset is, whilst being confident with the ball or being confident in being able to do what the manager wants you to do, there's still a level of, I'm a defender, I shouldn't be running up the pitch the moment I've passed it to my fullback. So I think the fact that in the Stoke game, they were a little bit more cautious. They used the ball, obviously still got on the ball, but weren't, again, bombing forward after the first pass every single time. I checked Sean McLaughlin's average position, and it seemed he was more in the left centre half area rather than dotted here, there, and everywhere. So that tells you that he's obviously, because he's the one that will usually join in. I think as a player, you naturally, like I say, you have your natural defensive instincts and you have what a manager wants you to do. And I think at the moment they're still tinkering in their own heads whether to stick by what the manager wants to do because you might get dropped the next game, or go with your defensive instinct and be a bit safer. But I think the game the other day must have been a managerial thing, that he's kind of asked them to maybe set up a little bit more solid. And as I said, they've got the results in the end, because, you know, to be solid like that whilst getting back into the game and scoring 3 goals, it was quite encouraging.
Fladge, I've got to be honest, I've not seen a huge amount from Malin yet, particularly the thing that he's worthy of a place in the side above Regan Slater. What have you made of him? And I know that's a question a lot of fans are asking about Malin. You know, is he worth his place in the team, particularly now, given the impact that Slater had off the bench on Friday night?
Well, it's interesting because he scored twice, but then at the same time, I can't really put my finger on anything substantial elsewhere that he's done. It's one of those ways he's just really gone about his business quietly. Brain frozen really on Malin. I don't really want to. I'm going to position myself on the fence. I think because I know Slater a lot more. I think to help bed in the system, I think it'd be more beneficial for Slater to play whilst everyone else is getting up to speed, because I think he could help Zambrano a lot more. Going back to the question as well about tactical tweaks, etc., I think there was a bit more from the passing department. There was some good moments where they actually went straight across the back four with everyone getting a touch and moving. And McLaughlin still ventured out of that defensive line, but only went as far as possibly playing alongside Zambrano at times, which I think made them look more sturdy. They certainly didn't look anywhere near as open as against Sheffield United. But the big thing that didn't change is the fact that Zambrano, in terms of possession, is still being bypassed. Of all the players on the pitch in a Hull City shirt, the number of passes he had in ranking was 10th. Out of all the players that played, which just seems to really baffle me that a centre mid can have so little ball in the game. Yes, he got subbed off, but everything seems to be around him. And I'm watching the positioning of the players, and it's almost like at times to be, if I'm being negative, they're second guessing where they should be at times. But then when maybe they get a little bit more ball, it'll work better. So tactically, I think it connected better because of who he picked. in comparison to Sheffield United, but tactically, no, I didn't really see too much different. I'm just glad that they dug themselves out of a hole in the second half.
Go on, Curtis, mate.
Off the back of that, yeah, do you think with Zambrano there, the fact that he was maybe missed out, do you think it's because of sometimes the way they play, and when I've watched them, they almost play like it's a possession game and 10 passes is a goal, that once they've made a pass, somebody makes a move to get the ball elsewhere? And do you feel that sometimes if he's in that position to receive the ball and he has to then make a run or fill a position, do you think that's why he maybe misses out on actually getting the ball where he wants it and doesn't get a lot of touches?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
Go on, Fletch.
No, I'll let you go first, Baz. I've just waffled.
I was actually going to throw it to Prutz as the midfielder amongst us.
as the silky ball playing midfielder. The greatest angle I ever gave defenders was just my name and number running off like that. Turn him! There's nowhere to just turn him. It's funny because there are games such as that. Obviously, I'm being tongue in cheek when I say that. That not for the want of trying, you kind of, the game's passing you by. You want to get on the ball. You're in a position or part of the field where you should, in theory, be seeing a lot of the ball. And it can be, it will be as frustrating for the player as it will be for the system and the fans. It's I'd like to think that would be the case, that he wants to be as involved as possible. But if there is, again, this is a point we made a couple of weeks ago where the centre part of the pitch, I'm not saying it's been bypassed, but almost kind of like on the list of priorities, it feels like it's been quite a way down, doesn't it? Whereas wider parts of the pitch and penetration has been a little bit more up the list. But you want to be, you can be unsung in that position, and it's a nice little sweet spot to find yourself as long as you keep getting in the team. You don't want to be unsung to the point of not being used, do you? You kind of think you want to be ticking along and dominating that, but if you're doing a lot of work that goes unnoticed, if that kind of crosses into just becoming unnoticed, then you've got a bit of a problem, I think, as a midfielder. So whether it's a case of him mentioning that to the manager, but Tim obviously, given his experience and in his ability to put a team together, he's got a hell of a lot of experience to be able to see what he wants to see and see perhaps what he needs to address. And maybe that is that. And again, it opens the door, doesn't it? We talked about the change made at half time, and Liam comes on and he really does take the game by the scruff of the neck. Maybe they need a central midfielder to do that, because as we've discussed, there's a fair portion now to pick. There's a fair portion of midfielders to pick from. So it's imperative of whoever gets that berth that they dominate.
Go on, Benzie.
Yeah, I'm just not convinced he wants to play through the midfield that much. Yeah. He wants to seem to get it wide. I'm just not convinced, and I'm not sure it's the right approach. Rebecca Robinson sends us a tweet to the 1904 Club. Great result against a poor Stoke side. I think that's a fair point. It's a note I'd written. Stoke were no great shakes, were they? First half performance was pathetic. I thought it was all right, Rebecca. Second, much improved, but is it going to be enough? City kept a better shape, and you can see what Tim is trying to do. But is the divide between midfield and defence going to cost us? She sends another one saying, we're also relying on players who aren't of the best quality to play high-performance total football. Is the gap between midfield and defence too big? I wondered, there was a big gaps in mid. Certainly against Sheffield United, the midfield was non-existent. Curtis?
Well, I think if you go to the Sheffield United game, Sheffield United, and they spoke about it afterwards, came with a game plan to play on the counter-attack. So they're always going to be in a solid, deep shape, kind of in a low block and wait for those opportunities. So I think what happens then is when City had a lot of the ball, it means that midfielders already who like to make movements off of the ball and make all these random movements to try and get on the ball, they're then doing it even more because they basically they're trying to get between the lines. They're trying to do whatever they can to find a bit of space when there isn't any. So what happens then is once they do lose it, they end up open, and that happened obviously in about 3 or 4 occasions against Sheffield United. I think the difference in, like I say, it's all well and good talking about the distance between midfield or connection between midfield and defence. I think if you're a defender and you're being told to run in the midfielder's way effectively, it's always going to be hard for that midfielder to receive the ball, I personally think. Because even if the midfielder receives the ball, there's going to be a man ready to engage either the defender that's running to the space, but then he can engage you because they're usually quite close to you. So you either run out of the way and try and get it elsewhere, or you stay where you are and be side by side. And from there, that also creates the gap in the back line. If you lose it, you've got two players standing on top of each other, and then that's where the gaps happen. So I think the connection will be better if you have defenders that actually play in defence and actually, will step forward to maybe play a pass forward, but retreat back to their positions. And maybe if you invite the fullbacks to get higher, that's no problem, because you can invite the space wide because you can always recover to that. But if you're going to leave big open holes in the middle of the pitch, be it from midfielders moving to try and receive the ball or defenders running out to try and receive a 1-2, that's going to be the biggest problem. But it didn't seem to be as much of a problem, particularly in the second half. In the first half, there was still counter-attacks where City found themselves 1v1, 2v2 and could have been punished with a cuter side and a more confident side. But the fact that they rode the storm and then come out in the second half and were a lot better is at least something to be confident with moving forward.
Benzie?
I'm going to ask the pair of you, Curtis and Prutz, and I'm not necessarily asking you to tell tales out of school here if you don't want to name names. But because he came in and said he's different and he wants to play in a different way, the manager. Have you been in a dressing room, been at a club, worked with a manager or a coach who's done something similar, and you thought, I'm not getting this, I'm not getting this, I'm not getting this, and then suddenly the penny drops, or maybe it doesn't drop, I don't know. Prutz, you look quizzing, you're thinking, you're racking the old memory bank there.
You can see and you can hear the grey matter, can't you, rubbing together. I mean, a slightly silly answer is that everyone that came in to try and change the way we played had a very simple MO, which was, can you stop being crap? Let's try and play better, which happened several times over my career. Not one that was inherently, and maybe there's a slight sophistication change to what football was, Christ, at the turn of the century, where the teams that I played in were always high energy or attempted high energy, which meant that what you did in midfield or on the wider parts of the pitch was you got a lot of miles in. You always tried to facilitate the players that were going to win you the game, that be it a winger that had a bit of magic in his feet or a striker that had a real eye for goal. And that there wasn't anything really kind of fundamental change-wise. I'm just racking my brains at the managers that I played for. There was nothing. We didn't go from one being, right, we're going to turn them to, we're going to definitely be possession-based. We changed for each game and within each game to make sure that you were ticking the boxes for what was in front of you. Apologies for sounding a little vague with it, because it is one of them where you're really trying to think about what you can do and what your career threw up. But there's no, be it Paul Hart, be it Gordon Strachan, be it David Platt, be it Gary Megson, Danny Wilson, Brian Laws, Stephen Presley. There was no one that I really played for that was, right, forget the midfield, we're shelling it. You're going to run up, you're going to get second balls as a philosophy. But there were games when that was called for. There were games it was called for where you would get the ball off the back foot. What I think has changed pretty fundamentally, and it's worked its way all the way down the divisions. When you sit and watch a football match now, even when I'm watching my son, who's only 12, when the goalie gets it and launches at a field, you are kind of like, oh, Christ, that's what football used to look like. Everyone's passing out from the back, aren't they, regardless? And that would be the real fundamental change that I've seen, which we did occasionally back in the day, but not necessarily too many times. It was more whether you had a goal kick which was then put out to the wider part of the pitch for someone to flick on, or again work on the second balls. But ours was always a case of fundamentally working with what you had, and as the season ebbed and flowed, what that season called for. You could start the year saying we're going to play like this, but more often than not, with games coming thick and fast, it just becomes a fight for survival, which I don't know whether that it is too vague that gets nowhere near answering your question, Burnsy, but just maybe the sophistication of football's changed. I think Tim's got to come in and say something, hasn't he? Every manager that gets a new job, that instant first impression, that part PR, part kind of charm offensive. Because if he comes in and goes, do you know what, we're going to dominate the ball, we're probably going to have games where you're going to be impatient with how we're moving the ball about the pitch and possibly frustrated until we may nick something at the end, you'd go, well, then why would you change the manager? But he's got to come in and say something different. It looks better when he gets a result, i.e. second half against Stoke. Before then, I think, and it's not being negative, Curtis, and you mentioned it before about what we're saying. I think we've every right as pundits, if you like, to scratch our heads and kind of go, still trying to work out what's going on here because there has been that change in philosophy. It's like the Rooney situation at Birmingham, which he got put in. We want to play no fear football. He's probably looking around going, well, what on earth do you mean by that? That's killed me in a way because now I've got to play in a certain way that whoppers like me go, well, that's not no fear football. You're not, you know what I mean? You look very scared in possession. What are you doing? So it's I'm intrigued to see the way that it's come in and how it develops from here on in. I mean, I'll give the floor back to Curtis because he's got several managers of some real repute that he played for and at a high level. So whether it's more sophisticated than the Prem, Curtis, I don't know, mate.
I think my only change, I can say, clear change in terms of a philosophy was probably when Paul Warne came in, because we'd been so well drilled with Liam and the way Liam wanted to do things. Because obviously, just coincidentally, I'm talking about Liam because on this whole podcast, but at Derby, because he was so meticulous as a coach for the year with Rooney, and then as he took over at the start of that season, so meticulous in every detail, he even recruited the players to play in his style. So recruited the likes of David McGoldrick, Conor Hourihane, James Collins. Everyone was recruited to play that style. Corey Smith. And then what happened is Liam didn't get the permanent post, and then Paul Warne comes in. And not to say Paul Warne was like, don't pass the ball, but the meticulous nature of the way we did things wasn't as important. It wasn't as important to, be it play out the back. It wasn't so important that the centre-half stand on it for a couple of seconds and try and engage the forwards and stuff like that. It wasn't really kind of detailed like that. It was kind of old school in terms of the way that we're going to win games in this division by getting the ball forward and then we can play from there. So not necessarily just shell it, but when it's an opportunity, play the ball down the channel. We'll get Colo or get the wingers onto it and then we play from there. And it was kind of more down to the interpretation of the likes of the Conor Hourihanes, the Corey Smiths or the Max Birds, because they're excellent footballers, particularly at League One level, to make it happen. So it that would be the only kind of, I guess, drastic change I could actually say. But coming back to the current situation at City, what Pratt said is the killer was the fact that the chairman has turned around and said he wants attacking and entertaining football. So I said after that Sheffield United game, they had a lot of the ball, but I can't see a lot of City fans walking away from that entertained. And I look at some stats here. So we talk about the errors and the thing from playing out from the back, right? So 23-24 season with Liam, there were 6 errors that led to goals. That's fine, but that's over a 46 game season. So far this season, there's been 3 errors leading to shots, 2 that have led to goals. So is that attacking intent maybe causing those problems? Then you go possession. Possession's pretty much the same, 55% with Liam, 55.6% with Liam, 56% with Volta. Shots on target per game, 5 with Liam, 3 with this season so far with Tim Volta. Goals per game, 1.2 with Liam, 0.8 this season so far. Although they've conceded less, conceding 1.2 against Liam's 1.3. So we're told about this entertaining football, but yet there's less shots. It's fair enough we're not conceded as many, but there's less shots. There's less goals. There's, it does make it difficult for a manager when that kind of is said. But ultimately, if the chairman's seen that in you, then regardless of what all us as pundits or as fans or whatever you want to call us, whatever we think, the chairman's going to expect it from you. And if you're not bringing it, similar to Liam, you'll be on your way as well. Because
it's such a strange one, isn't it? Because having been a footballer and now talking about football and being part of a company that packages football up and obviously sells it around, and it being part game, part sport, part product, there is always that bit in you as well. Because when covering games for as long as I have now, which has been just a joy, that there are games that you sit in that you watch that are just crap. That's by virtue of how many games they are and the fact that it's played by human beings. So there are some games which are flat, some really grab you by the whatever and really make your kind of heart sing because of how joyous it is. But more often than not, there's a semblance of, as a professional, of obviously you want to perform, but I always think, and it may be a generational thing, that performance is judged on results. And I'm not saying that I was of a generation of footballers that kind of thought we don't really care what it looks like, but it was always results. And I still think it will always be results. But there's been a whole shift, I think, because football is covered so much, because there are so many platforms to discuss it on, away from what the traditional ones were, which would have been reading the paper on a Monday morning, sitting in the pub with your mates. Now it's forums, it's chat rooms, it's every single platform, social media, where you can give chapter and verse. You can clip up statistics and put those out to back up a point. You can use metrics to really ram your opinion down someone's throat because I'm right and it's this and it's that and it's this. That you forget how innately, wonderfully frustrating football is, because the wonderful thing that keeps on happening, and I hope it happens forever, is you buy a ticket to the cinema, you buy a ticket to a concert, to whatever, and you're fundamentally going there because you know you're going to get entertained because you bought something for you that you enjoy. Football is the most magically bewildering thing, because you pay your money and you can come off and go home so pissed off because they've been terrible, but you'll still go on Tuesday and you'll still go the following Saturday. So maybe we're getting to the point where it used to be, I pay my money so I can say what I want. Now it's pay your money so you can absolutely debate this. You can demand entertainment as well as results. I just think that sometimes there's just a huge discrepancy between getting them both close together and having that magical day or match when it does happen, because it's played by human beings and it's innately frustrating. It's a great thing to discuss on a podcast or send your messages in, obviously, to the 1904 Club. I just think the cynic in me says the sweet spot on a good day is both. The realistic side of it is, more often than not, you're probably going to have more frustrating games than you are games that everything and all the boxes are ticked, if you know what I mean.
Go on, Curtis.
Yeah, I think coming back to Protz's point about, we will watch some rubbish games and we'll sit there in the studio as pundits, rather than just being able to kind of have a sigh and walk home after the game or walk to your car, whatever you're doing after the game. We have to build narrative. So we're then over-analysing clips sometimes to try and find a talking point, to try and find a narrative of what we can talk about for the half hour of dead air that we're going to have if we don't have a conversation. So that is one side where Protz totally makes a good point. But the other side of it is talking about football and the way it should be played and all of that kind of stuff. I think if we use the example now of Vincent Kompany, all of these managers now have always, first of all, looked to Pep. Everyone wants to play like Pep. Everyone wants to play Pep football, blah, blah. He's changed football in this country to the fact that we've got League Two teams. And as Prutz said, you'd be surprised even at under 12s when they play a long goal kick. So football has changed because of that. But managers are sticking to philosophies, because if you see a Vincent Kompany that gets relegated with a Burnley side and goes to Bayern Munich and now is flourishing at Bayern Munich, having scored 20 goals in 3 games, it's a no-lose for the manager. The team might go down and the fans might be unhappy for that season, or, we lost again, why don't we just get it up the pitch, blah, blah, blah. The manager's like, no, I'm going to stick by my philosophy. I'm going to stick my... And when it comes to metrics, because that's the modern game, everything's stats, metrics and all of that, he'll be the perfect fit for a certain club, which ended up being Bayern Munich, fortunately for him. So when you look at the likes of the Russell Martins nowadays and whoever else, because Russell Martin was doing that in League Two with MK Dons, and then he's done it with Swansea. And Swansea weren't a great team in the Championship. They've had lots of the ball and thousands of passes. But I would never say I watched the Swansea team and thought, oh gosh, they're going to rip up the league. But the difference is metrics means he was put in charge of that Southampton job. And once you've got those few better players, all of a sudden you can score the goals, win the games. And now he's in the Premier League and he's finding it difficult again. But if he sticks to his philosophy, I don't think there'll be a shortness of job offers for him if he were to lose his job at Southampton.
It's almost finding the players to fit the manager, isn't it? Instead of the manager to come into a club. It's the company wants such a great example because it's exactly that. He very resolute in the way that he approached the Premier League with Burnley, and to all intents and purposes, everyone's looking at it going, I can't really believe you're doing that, but it's his way of doing it. I mean, maybe it's a special case in the fact that it's Vincent Kompany that could do that, because there'll be other managers that try and stick to the guns and get shot down and ridiculed, and they'll sink without trace. But it's going full circle, bringing it back to Hull City, of a manager that has been brought in because the owner, which is absolutely his want, demands football to be played in a certain way. Then you've got to give him the right players for that. Time will tell if these are the right players for that, and if the management suits the players that have been brought in on the pre-existing ones. But when it boils down to this would be an intriguing discussion, if we're sat here in May and City are mid-table, nowhere near the playoffs, then it becomes almost a bit of nitpicking, because a cynic would say, well, Liam played football in a different way, but still didn't make the playoffs. So I think whether you finish 7th or 10th, 12th, 13th, wherever, yes, obviously there's a slight difference in remuneration and stuff like that. But as a project, you'd still kind of go, well, I think we're treading water a bit here, because nothing's really changed. Unless this next season shows this season that's obviously unfolded, City suddenly hit the gas and they are creating chances and scoring lots of goals and chaotically dominating games, and then I absolutely stand there to be corrected. But I'll be intrigued to see the way it pans out, and then obviously the post-mortem that comes off the back of this season and what fans think of. Well, once again, we've turned up in numbers, we've paid our money. Are we any more entertained? I don't really know. Have we been any more successful? From a league position, doesn't really look like it. But if it's a way of football that gets City into the playoffs at the end of the season or anywhere near the top 2, then you'd have to say it's been a success, whether you've seen it with your own eyes or whether it's just manifested itself in results.
I think a big difference, though, is hope. That's what I'll say is again, going back to Liam, because they were there or thereabouts most of the season, there's always the hope, and it put that edge on when you go to a game. Whereas if you kind of know you're in 13th, 14th, we're not bad enough to go down, but we're probably not good enough to make up that ground. I think then that could become mundane. And that, like you said, if you finish 7th, finish 14th, you're still not in the playoffs, you've still not got a chance to go into the Premier League. But I think the fact that if you're able to like I say, last year they were there or thereabouts and unfortunately fell short. But if this is just kind of like, oh, we did okay kind of season, then what have we learned? Have the players got better? Has the system helped the team of players? We won't really know, because the proof will be in the pudding the next year, which are you then going to give him the extra time to start another campaign and then go again? But this is all obviously hypothetical. We could see an upturn now and go on a massive run. We don't know. But it's all just food for thought once you get to the end of the season.
And Fletch, that's the challenge now, isn't it? That they've, with everything that's been said, and it all comes from a place of wanting to see City do well. Everybody that's like you Curtis, after the Sheffield United game, you raised your concerns, your observations, having played for the football club and played in the Premier League. Lee Hendry got a lot of stick on Friday night before the game for raising concerns about the way City play. Obviously, they won the game, so then everybody piles on and goes, well, you don't know what you're talking about. But Fletch, the key thing now is to go on and build on this, isn't it? Because they've got themselves that elusive victory that we didn't know when or if it was going to come. They've got it. They're now playing a Cardiff team that, as Curtis has said as well, you don't know what you're going to get from them because of the manager change. They've got a point and a goal so far, but they're at home, and the Hull City fans haven't seen a home win since QPR at the beginning of April. So they've got to kick on now, haven't they?
Yeah. 2 wins at home in 2024 sounds quite alarming, but that's the truth. And to lots and lots of draws in there. I've been really critical, and I'm happy to accept if I've maybe been overcritical of Tim Walter's style in the first few weeks of this season. And I always think back, though, to 2018-19 when Nigel Adkins was in charge and they got beat 3-0 at Reading. And I think Bernsey would maybe share the sentiment of this because we were stood next to each other at the time. We thought that was Nigel done and dusted. Now, if that situation was now with Tim Walter, I think he'd be shown the door. But this needs more time, and I appreciate I've been very critical so far. Going back to what I said right at the beginning of the podcast, they've made a slight turn on the corner. But, and without wishing to sound crude, I think the squad that he's got at the moment, it's just like a jigsaw that's in a box that's unassembled. It's going to take time for him to work out and his staff to work out what works best. There's going to be a lot of tweaking, a lot of, rotating players about. We've seen some of them play in 3 different positions already, and that must be incredibly challenging for him. So after this game, if they win on Saturday against Cardiff, you're going to start seeing more and more confidence ooze out of some of those players that at the moment the City fans can know and trust because they've seen them play. And now it's a case of seeing what the new players can deliver when you get a little 2-game winning run, etc. How do they react to it? What do they bring? So it's certainly going to be very, very interesting.
Bernsey, you'll be there on Saturday. That is crucial, isn't it? Particularly when you look at the fact that they've got QPR and then Norwich away to finish before the international break, coming back and home games against Burnley and Sunderland. That is, Saturday is crucial, isn't it? To prove it's not just that Stoke wasn't just a one-off, that they've got to build on it.
There was signs of encouragement. It's he's got to get his team selection right. Boothery to Wembley tweets us to say, is Championship experience the way to go for now to allow the team to gel? Slater, Miller, Palmer seem to get the game, and that's what's needed as opposed to Mellon, Omar, and Zambrano. Omar has to start showing some end ball. Looks bright. Yeah, exactly. I thought he did well. They look more. I know they gave Stoke some opportunity, but they look more solid. So you've got to build on it. I just what the last 2 home games I've gone along because of the I'm different. It's and I take exactly what Prut says. The owner wants exciting football, lots of goals and everything like that. I've gone along thinking, well, when's that going to happen? When's that going to happen? And it's not happened. And I'll go on Saturday hoping there were little glimmers that maybe he might have got it right, but I'm not sure it's by design. I'll go back to why didn't Miller start? I couldn't see why Miller didn't start on the basis of what we saw when he came on and Slater came on against Sheffield United. Why didn't they start? And he only changed it because Abdush got injured at half time. So I don't know. Curtis has got a point. I love the way Curtis has just he's got into the vibe. He's like me. When he's got a question or a point to make, he raises his finger or his pen. It's nice, Curtis. I'm enjoying that because the rest
of well-mannered boy.
I've
spoken enough already. That's why. But I had a point on the back of that and saying, you want to see the goals, you want to see the exciting football. Well, you've got a striker that in a game where you win 3-1, he had 8 touches. 8 touches of the football.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about moving forward, yes, if you've got 2 wingers like Mo Salah and Luis Diaz that can score 20 goals a season themselves, that's fantastic. But unfortunately, City haven't got that right now. And if you've got a striker that's only having 8 touches a game, that's got to be a concern. If you want to see a striker having at least 2-3 shots, but he's not going to be having a shot every other touch, is he? So I think that kind of maybe is a sample of the way that City have played. Maybe being a bit too pragmatic with the ball. Sorry,
I will raise my pen. Is that his fault, Curtis, or is he feeding on scraps?
No. That's not his fault. No, that's an example of style, isn't it? It's obviously if you've got a striker that's occupying the centre backs and he's told, yep, you've got to stay between the centre backs, stay as high as you can, and wait for the ball to come to you, that's fine. You don't always have to have the false nines, as it were, coming down and receiving the ball from midfield and being nowhere near the box. But the issue is, it's kind of a summary of the fact that he plays 90 minutes, 89 minutes in the game and has 8 touches. Is that a sample of not enough balls being played through the lines? Is it a sample of not enough crosses in the box or not enough balls forward where he can compete even for headers? Like, we don't know, but there's got to be an issue when, like I say, and there's times when, we can look at City and people say, oh, Haaland only touched the ball 16 times. He scored 2, 3. Yes, but the difference is the quality of ball he's getting through the line, or when he does get it, it's the right time, and obviously he's clinical. But I think for Chris Bedia, it's obviously, it must be very frustrating and highly, his patience must be very good, basically. But the issue is there's not really much to compete for the place at the moment, and that's probably an issue as well. That obviously you've got a striker that's come in and wanting to hit the ground running, hasn't seen enough of the ball to do so, and the competition isn't as strong either.
So that's as much
that's where they're at with João Pedro.
Yeah, we're expecting that he was in Hull over the weekend to get it done and dusted, a year contract on the table with the option of a further year. So we may see him at some point this week. I'd be surprised if he was involved against Cardiff, given the fact that he's obviously not played for quite a while, and we know that Tim is, he likes to blood players in. He likes to be patient. We've not seen Alzate. We'd not seen Alzate for a bit, and then he was on the bench at Stoke on Friday. I mean, coming back to what we talked about way back at the top of the show about Zambrano, you kind of feel that Alzate is going to be that player. We don't know yet what's going to happen with Zambrano's potential ban. Alzate, is obviously a player of caliber. We've talked about that before. You kind of feel when he's fully fit and up to speed that he is the guy that probably will come in and take that number 6 role. But yeah, Pedro is ongoing. They're hopeful of getting that over the line, and so we just wait for the white smoke to come. So I wanted to mention on Curtis's point about Chris Bedia. There's also the fact that he was quite a late sign in the window. He's coming from abroad. He's never played in England, let alone the Championship. There is going to be an element of acclimatization for him to being in a different country, and also getting to grips. As we've said before, that there are a lot of new players, so they're finding. Casey Palmer spoke about this on last week, that a lot of players still finding their feet in training and understanding each other and themselves and how they fit in the pecking order. So Bedia will be no different, will he?
No, and you hope that, going off Casey's point, that collectively they're finding their feet together, but the ones with that experience, which is going back to the question that Burnsy raised about how you attack the Championship and who you have on your side, there's enough in there to keep him ticking over. Again, it's another point that we've discussed about who would lead the line for City this season. A lot of chat about Burst, of course, when he came in, but with Bedia seemingly having that shirt at the moment, it's as much about what he can bring out of other players as what he gives himself, I think. And given the minutes he's got under his belt so far in a team as well that's growing together and finding its feet together with the way that the manager wants to play, there's not too much in the way of things happening against him, I wouldn't say. Having not seen every single minute of every single City game, I'm more than happy to be proven wrong with that particular opinion. But there is a broad kind of acceptance of, as you say, a work in progress. And we always coming across players that came from different countries, maybe slightly different approaches. But if that player came in, worked hard, was a good teammate, involved himself in what the team wanted to do, then you'd really vouch for him. You'd go to battle for him. And I think, again, having seen the bits of City that I've seen, from a work rate point of view, from the potential to lead the line for City, there's a lot to like, I think, about him. And having someone like a Casey Palmer who's certainly been around the block, especially in the Championship, and knows his way around it, can only be of a benefit to someone like Bedia at top.
Curtis, one question that we've had quite a bit this season so far, and I know you've got to get off, mate. Just quickly from Rich and Harry amongst
Yeah, because the rest of us guys have got hours to sit around and chat to you, mate.
Zonal marking, and obviously that was an issue for the Stoke set piece. I think their first goal from a corner in 64 games. What's your thoughts on their setup at corners?
I haven't overly analysed it fully in terms of different people's positions, but obviously a lot of teams play zonal now. I've played zonal, I've played marking. My personal thing with zonal marking is, depending on the way the manager sets it up, it can be either a big responsibility or you feel like it's not my fault, and that depends on the player. In my experiences, if the player wants to take responsibility of going to head that ball, then they're a good person to be in the zone. If they're just happy to stand in their area and be like, I'm not going to help anyone else as long as it doesn't score over my head, then that's the issue. And I think it's interpretation. Like I say, this is your area, but if you can win a ball 2 yards in front of your area, go and win it. And as long as you're not jumping all over your fellow centre half or whatever and maybe crossing someone over, I think you should always be aware of where the runners are coming from still. I don't think you should just be ball watching, be aware of where the runners are coming from. But me, I was always the centre of the 6-yard box. So I knew my job is to head the ball. So wherever the ball goes, if I have to chase the ball, I'm going to win this header, regardless of who's there. And I think as long as somebody takes that responsibility, it's a good thing. But if somebody's happy just to stay in their pocket and be like, it's not my fault, that's where the problem lies.
Real Curtis, I know you've got to shoot off, mate. Thank you so much for joining us on the 1904 Club today. So brilliant. Thanks so much.
No problems. Thanks for having me on, gents.
Cheers. Laters.
Take care. See you later.
Love you.
Love you, mate. See you Saturday.
I made him say it. Yes.
Prutz, just finally, Cardiff at the weekend. That is, how are you seeing that one?
Got to win it. With the great respect to Cardiff, they've played poorly enough to get the manager the sack, so it's got to be hopefully a turning point from the second half against Stoke to then put that into a game such as this, where the pressure and expectations thrown back onto City's shoulders, and any aspirations, any ambition to finish the top half, top 6, any higher. This is a game that they've got to put to bed.
Bernsey, echo that.
Yeah. And let's see a vibrant home performance. Build on this. Pick the right team. And Cardiff are in disarray. What have they got? 1 point from 18 this season, so they're there for the taking. As suddenly everybody thinks, oh, Bernsey, typical City syndrome, but they are. You've got, you can't let Stoke just be the one swallow in the summer, can you? Come on, if sort it out, get it done, beat Cardiff, move on.
Fletch?
It would be the epitome of one Stoke winning being the step forward and then not winning against Cardiff being 2 steps back, wouldn't it? You've got, I echo the sentiments of what everyone said. You've got to go and get 3 points, and I would expect nothing less.
Brilliant. That's about all we've got time for today. Just one final thing to say. Happy birthday to Hull City, because, of course, Thursday is the 120th anniversary of the football club. So many congratulations to Hull City. Benji, you bringing a cake on Saturday?
Look at the size of me. I don't need to be anywhere near cakes, do I?
Benji, don't say that.
Let's be honest. I know, but it's good. I mean, when you think back through the history, there have been times when you thought, well, they're not going to make tomorrow. Never mind make 120 years. So well done to everybody involved. Yeah. And it seems appropriate then. They'll win on Saturday. It's a birthday party. Yeah. Nobody's going to be sobbing in the toilets, are they? And, mascara running or whatever.
Arguing on the phone with someone outside.
It's a party. What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong?
Oh God. There, he said it. So that's it from the 1904 Club this week. Thanks so much to friend of the show, Curtis Davies, for tuning in, and also for Prutz, Fletch, and Bernsey as ever. Keep sending your comments, your thoughts, everything else. We'll be back with another show very, very soon.